Now picture this. Imagine marrying the man of your dreams, having a child together. But then, the unthinkable happens. The man you've called your husband for 10 years, the father of your child, wasn't human. You've shared your life, your bed, your love with a ghost, and you never knew. Keep watching. This shocking tale will make you question everything you know. Once upon a time, in the peaceful village of Awaro, there was a man named Taiwo. He was a palm wine tapper who lived with his elderly parents and his identical twin brother, Kemi. Taiwo was a hard-working man, respectful, and full of love for his family. His father had passed down the ancient craft of tapping palm wine to him, and every day, Taiwo climbed tall palm trees to collect the sweet sap that turned into the village's beloved drink. One fateful afternoon, while helping his father in the thick forest, disaster struck. Taiwo, balancing precariously on the palm tree, lost his grip and fell. His body hit the ground with a sickening thud. His father rushed to his side, but it was too late. Taiwo had died. The village was consumed by grief. Taiwo was buried in the backyard, under a large mango tree, where his father had once played with him as a boy. His twin brother, Kemi, mourned deeply, as did the rest of the family. Slowly, though, the village began to heal, and life moved on. But little did anyone know, Taiwo's story wasn't over. In a distant village called Olokoro, a man arrived. No one knew him, but there was something familiar about him. His confidence, his charm, the way he carried himself, they immediately took notice of him. Women, both married and single, couldn't help but feel drawn to him. He wasn't a native of Olokoro, but he quickly became a favorite in the village, known for his perfectly crafted palm wine that no one could resist. His quiet aura and mysterious ways intrigued everyone. He was a traveler, he said, here to sell his palm wine. "I'm from a distant land," he would say when asked about his origins. "My family lives there, far away." People didn't pry any further. There was something about him that made them trust him. His charm was magnetic, and before long, his name was on everyone's lips. But there was one woman who caught his eye, Kemi. She was different from the others. Her kindness, her gentle smile, and the warmth in her eyes set her apart. He found himself visiting her shop, striking up conversations, finding any excuse to be near her. Kemi had heard stories of this mysterious man who had brought prosperity to Olokoro, but never imagined he would stand before her. She couldn't help but be intrigued by him. Their relationship blossomed over time. Taiwo was respectful, hardworking, but there was an air of secrecy about him. He never spoke of his family, and whenever Kemi asked about his past, he would smile and avoid the question. "My family is old. They live in a distant land," he would say softly, his eyes glimmering with an emotion she couldn't quite place. The connection between them was undeniable. And one day, Taiwo asked Kemi to marry him. It was a quiet proposal, under the mango tree by her house, with only the sounds of nature surrounding them. "Marry me, Kemi," Taiwo said, looking into her eyes with such warmth that her heart fluttered. "I can give you everything you need. My family may be far away, but I promise I will love you with all my heart." Without hesitation, Kemi agreed. Then Taiwo went ahead to plead with Kemi. "Kemi, I need you to convince your parents to accept me. They won't meet my family because they are very far away. They are old and they can't travel," Taiwo said, his voice soft but insistent. Kemi was confused, but she loved him deeply. She agreed, convincing her parents without meeting his family. She accepted his promise that they would visit his family after they were married, which she told her people and they were okay with the arrangement. Weeks later, they got married in a small but beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends. The village was overjoyed for them. It was the talk of the town, Kemi and Taiwo, the perfect couple. But Taiwo, ever the mysterious one, mostly avoided the cameras. The village had a tradition of taking photos of weddings, but Taiwo only agreed to take one shot, just one, with his bride. He smiled warmly for that single photo, but there was something in his eyes that Kemi couldn't fully understand. Life in the village was blissful. Taiwo continued to tap palm wine, and their small family grew. A year into their marriage, Kemi gave birth to a beautiful boy, Taiwo. Everything seemed perfect. Taiwo was a loving husband and father, and the village admired him. But as the years passed, there were moments when Kemi couldn't shake the feeling that something was not quite right. Taiwo's peculiar rules began to surface. One night, after they had been married for a while, he sat her down. "Kemi, there are things I need to tell you," he said seriously. "No mirrors in the house. No stainless steel plates or cups, only calabash. We must respect the ways of my ancestors. These are things that must be done, and never question me." Kemi was taken aback. She didn't understand why these rules mattered so much. It was odd, but she trusted Taiwo. She agreed, thinking it was just part of his mysterious nature. They went along with it, and life continued peacefully. There were nights when Kemi would wake up to find Taiwo standing by the window, gazing into the distance with an expression she couldn't quite place. She would call his name, and he would smile, brushing it off. But that uneasy feeling would linger in her chest, like a quiet whisper she couldn't ignore. Then one fateful day, everything changed. Kemi and Taiwo were at the village market buying provisions. Taiwo, ever the energetic child, spotted a man in the crowd. Without thinking, he ran to him, throwing his arms around the stranger and shouting, "Daddy!" Kemi froze. Her heart stopped as she watched the scene unfold. She rushed to Taiwo, her heart pounding in her chest. The man the boy had embraced looked exactly like Taiwo. Her Taiwo. Kemi stood there, confused. "Taiwo, what are you doing?" she asked softly, kneeling beside him. She stared at the stranger, trying to make sense of what was happening. The man looked at her with a familiar gaze, almost as if he too recognized her. He smiled softly, then spoke. "I'm Kenny. I come here to handle the distribution of my farm produce every market day." Kemi's mind raced. The man before her looked so much like her husband, but Taiwo had never mentioned a twin. Her voice trembled as she said, "I'm sorry. My son thought you were his father. You look exactly alike." Kenny's face turned pale. He looked at her with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "Your husband?" he asked slowly. "What's his name?" "Taiwo," Kemi said, her voice barely a whisper. In that moment, she mentioned his name. Something strange happened. Back at home, Taiwo, who had been preparing his palm wine tapping tools, froze. His body stiffened, and his eyes turned completely white, as if something deep within him had been triggered. He felt the weight of his secret unraveling. The wind picked up, sending a chill through the air, and it rushed through the village square, reaching Kemi and Kenny as they stood there in shock. Kenny, sensing the shift in the air, spoke with growing concern. "Taiwo, my twin brother, Taiwo, but he died years ago." He stared at Kemi, his voice trembling with grief. "We buried him. He's gone." Kenny begged her, "Please, take me to him. I need to see him." "Please, Kemi." Still in shock, Kemi led him to her house, though every step felt heavier. As they walked, Villagers greeted Kenny, thinking they were seeing Taiwo. Kemi gave small smiles, her mind spinning with confusion, but she said nothing. Something wasn't right, and she felt the weight of it more with each passing moment. When they arrived at her home, the silence was deafening. The house, which once felt full of life and laughter, now seemed empty. Kemi stepped inside, and her heart dropped. Taiwo's belongings were gone. His clothes, his shoes, even his special eating plate, everything had vanished. It was as if he had never been there. "What is going on?" Kemi whispered, turning to Kenny, her voice breaking. "Where is Taiwo?" Kenny searched the house, his eyes scanning every corner. "Something's wrong here," he said quietly. "Do you have any pictures of him?" Kemi remembered the wedding photos. She quickly led him to her father's house. They entered the living room where they had hung the wedding picture. When Kenny saw it, he froze. His eyes widened. "That's him. That's Taiwo." His voice cracked with emotion. "He was my twin brother. He died many years ago in an accident. But somehow, he came back." Kemi's world shattered. No, this can't be true. He's my husband. We have a son together." But there were no more answers. The villagers had gathered around, their murmurs filled with disbelief. But Kenny said nothing to them. He just stood there, his heart heavy with grief. Kemi's parents were devastated. They blamed themselves for everything. They should have asked questions, they should have protected their only child. Kemi couldn't believe it. She refused to accept the truth. She waited for Taiwo to come home, praying that he would walk through the door and explain everything. But as night fell, there was still no sign of him. Kemi cried herself to sleep, her heart broken and confused. The village buzzed with gossip. Some pitied her, others blamed her for not seeing the truth sooner. But Kemi was left with only the emptiness of her broken world. The next morning, Kemi's father suggested that they go see Taiwo's grave. "You need closure, Kemi," he said softly. "It's the only way to be sure." They journeyed to his village. Not long, they arrived at his parents' house in Awaro. The moment they stepped inside, Mama Kenny looked at them with concern, sensing something was wrong. Kenny didn't waste time. He explained what had happened. Mama Kenny gasped, her hands flying to her face. "My Taiwo?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Baba sat quietly, his face hardening with grief. "We knew something was strange. But this?" he said softly, shaking his head. Without another word, they all stood up, knowing the only way to find peace was to see Taiwo's grave. As they arrived at Taiwo's grave, Kemi felt a shiver run down her spine. The weeds had grown thick over it, but there was something unsettling about the ground. It had been disturbed recently. The earth was loose, as though someone or something had recently crawled in. The weeds had grown thick over the grave, but the name Taiwo was still visible. Kemi stood there, looking at the grave, her heart heavy with sorrow. She stared at her son, wondering if he, too, would turn out to be a ghost, a spirit like his father. But her love for him erased all doubt. At least she had him. Both Awaro and Olokoro village never stopped talking about the strange events that had unfolded. Some used it as a lesson, warning their children to be careful when choosing a husband or wife. Others used it to scare their children, telling them the story of the man who had returned from the dead. For Kemi, the pain was unbearable. She had married a ghost. She had shared her bed with a spirit for 10 years. She had borne him a child. Her heart broke every time she looked at her son, wondering if he was a ghost too. One night, Kemi awoke suddenly to the unmistakable feeling of someone sitting on the edge of her bed. She felt the mattress dip beneath a weight that wasn't there when she opened her eyes. The room was dark, and the cold breeze sent shivers down her spine. "Taiwo?" she whispered. But no answer came, only the sound of her own breath, quickening as the chill in the room grew. Some hunters, passing near the village outskirts, reported seeing Taiwo's palm wine tapping gear abandoned by the boundary. No one knew how it had gotten there. It was as though Taiwo's presence had vanished without a trace. And so, the story of Taiwo, the man who had come back from the dead, became a warning to the people of Awaro and Olokoro. The lesson was simple but profound. Never ignore the signs in front of us. Don't be too trusting and drunk in love that you forget to ask important questions. And sometimes, the most dangerous secrets are the ones we're too afraid to question. Thanks for watching. What do you think about this story? Do you believe things like this happen? Has it happened to someone you know? Tell me in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe and watch more epic tales by UJ